Hi guys, it is Mr. Dave with the RayKitty Creation Workshop, and you guys are joining us for the RayKitty Science Project. This is our TV show where we bring the science experience to you. We're working with the awesome folks at Catharsis Media to make a show where we can have some science that you can do at home, some science that you can see a little bit bigger demonstrations. We're going to be doing some fun ones today right off the bat. The things you're going to want to have if you want to play along, if you will, are going to be cornstarch and water. Cornstarch and water and a bucket or a bowl or something to mix it in. This is one that maybe you've done before, but we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind it and how it works, and we're going to talk about some extra ways that this strange non-Newtonian substance can kind of use in everyday life. They're developing some fun science with this. So if you've had a chance to get that cornstarch and water and a bowl, go ahead and grab that if you haven't. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out by doing a very simple demonstration that maybe you've done in the past, you've done at home. Parents, this one here is a wonderful experiment because it is terribly messy. But it's also ridiculously easy to clean up. And that makes kind of for the best. The kids have the most fun when they are making a mess. And by kids, I mean young adults. I mean students of any age. I have a daughter who is getting her master's, and I have a 14-year-old teenage daughter. And for their birthday, we did make a 150-gallon enclosure full of Oobleck so that they could earth bend for their movie. So if you're a geek like I am and like they are, you'll kind of appreciate that. But we're going to make it on a lot smaller scale. Don't make it that big because it takes forever to clean up. Now, I always mention the cleanup. This, of course, is very easy. As far as cleanup, give it a couple minutes till it dries. You can wipe it right up with a rag. If you're making slime, for instance, you don't want that slime to get caught in the carpet or your dog's hair because it turns into hard plastic. This stuff here, if your cat walks across the table and gets it all over the place, you can just wipe off those little paws and it's good to go. This is very safe. It's not destructive. In fact, they use this on babies' bottoms to sometimes if you get a rash and things like that. So it's very safe on your skin. You'll feel wonderful when you're done. And so it's an easy cleanup. It's super safe. And we're going to start with that kind of lower level science of just having fun. And then we're going to introduce some higher concepts. So this is a non-Newtonian, as we said, substance. And a non-Newtonian means it doesn't quite fit the normal parameters of being a solid or a liquid in this case. So what happens is when you apply energy, this stuff we're going to make, this Oobleck, which, yes, that's a real word, it is Oobleck. The name came from Dr. Seuss with the book Bartholomew and the Oobleck. We're not going to be raining this from the sky, hopefully today, but the Oobleck that you're making, and you can Google it, it's a real word, OOBLEK, is non-Newtonian because when you apply energy, it acts like a solid, okay? So this type here is a real pectic non-Newtonian substance, meaning when you apply energy, it acts like a solid. When it doesn't have that energy, it acts like a liquid. Now, before we build on that too much, we're going to go ahead and make some and let the fun start. Now, I do have a tray here that we're going to be using. When you are making this at home, you can do it on the kitchen counter. It is messy in that it's going to be dripping around and those kind of things, but it's really so easy to clean up. We've had, as I said, we had 20 kids digging in this stuff and playing with this stuff, and they were covered in it. And in a matter of minutes, you were able to just wipe them off with the rag, and everybody's nice and clean. So it's very easy to clean up, so don't worry if you get little splashes of it. Don't worry if you are kind of spraying it all over. When I'm doing this next one, you are going to see some here on my tablecloth, so don't worry about that. It cleans up very easy, okay? So I want to really, really emphasize that. As messy as it looks, it's very easy to clean. So this is like a RayKitty Plus as far as a science project. If you've never made this, I've done this with adults at an adult event, and adults get just as much of a kick out of this one as the kids do. So let's get to making it. I have here a little beaker that just shows me some of my measurements. The stoichiometry, which is the ratios of how things are going to work together in order to make a very advanced chemical reaction or in order to make some really good sugar cookies. Stoichiometry is measuring those ratios. And we are going to have a little bit of play with the stoichiometry, which means you don't have to be exact in this one. And that's a fun one too. You want to be pretty close, and I'll give you some ideas on where to start. Now, you're going to want to start with the idea of having 1.5 times the cornstarch as you do water, okay? So if you have 1 cup of water, you're going to want 1.5 cups of cornstarch. And that's just a good place to start. You may find, hey, I like it a little soupier, or hey, I like it a little chunkier. It really depends on what you're going for. When you're doing this at home, feel free to put food coloring in it. I work with children. I never put food coloring in anything because you do not want to have that food coloring all over your hands and things. My easy cleanup thing goes right out the window as soon as you add food coloring. Some other things you can add are little beads, things like that can make it a lot more exciting. So let's go ahead and get started here. This, again, if you if you know me, you know I like to make cheap science. These are very inexpensive. These ones here I bought at the grocery store. You can also buy them at the dollar store for a little over $1. You can get a lot of cornstarch very cheap. So we've got our cornstarch. We're going to measure this one out. Now remember, if I get some powder on the counter and things, it's not going to matter. It's very easy to clean up. And this is a very, very, very fine powder. So it does have the poof factor to it. Now, that is important because that's why it works, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So I'm going to pour, let's start with, we're going to start with 400 milliliters. Now, you can use cups, you can use whatever measurements that you have. I'm going to start with that because that's what's written on here. Now, really, as long as we go with that 1 to 1.5 ratio, you'll be okay. Now, you'll notice what looks like a little bit of a vapor coming up. That's actually this powder. And that's very important because that's why it works, okay? The reason this Oobleck works is because those particles are so small, okay? Remember, I said when you have energy, you get a solid. When you have less energy, it'll be more liquid. Now, I brought something here to kind of demonstrate the science behind that because this is a really good way to understand what's happening. I have magnets, okay? Magnets are so much fun. A magnet, you can stick it to the fridge, great fun. It's way more fun if you have more magnets because then you can play with resistance also, okay? Now, in these little bitty particles, believe it or not, they have an electrical charge, okay? And an electrical charge translates into a magnetic charge. So if you've played with magnets before, if not, grab some off the fridge and check this out. If you have a negative side and a negative side, what you're going to get is resistance. It's going to push. It's going to fight me pushing those things together. Now, when it's doing that, they're in the air here, and you're going to get very little friction. Okay? Friction is what happens when something's rubbing against something else. Now, if something has very little friction, it's not very viscous. Okay? Now, viscous, you can picture something not viscous by thinking about water. Okay? Now think about syrup, okay? Syrup is viscous. It takes a while glug, 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 to pour it out of there. Water, you pour it right over there. I don't know why you'd want water on your pancakes, but when you're doing this here, the water is not very viscous, so those little bitty molecules can move very easily. Same with this stuff. When you don't have a lot of energy, those molecules move very, very easily. Now, what changes and what's cool about this is those particles are so small, they're teensy-weensy, which is another scientific term, meaning not a real word. They're teensy-weensy, and so if you apply enough force, you can make them make contact. Now, as soon as you have that contact, you have friction. Okay, so now all of a sudden we have friction in these magnets. So these magnets are now rubbing together. The same thing's happening with these particles. When you apply that energy, all of a sudden you have friction. And so while something can move around easily without it, as soon as they're touching, it's hard to move around, so it acts like a solid, okay? And that's this particular type of non-Newtonian substance, okay? There are other ones, ketchup, okay? Now, we're not going to get out ketchup and pour it all over because I hate ketchup, and it stinks, and I don't want to make a big mess. But ketchup works the opposite. If you've ever noticed, when you pound on the bottom of the ketchup bottle, that's when it squirts all over your plate and your fries and your friend's face, okay? So what happens is when you turn it over, that lack of energy or less energy, it acts like a solid. When you get more energy, it acts like a liquid. So that's how it squirts all over the place, and then at the same time, you can't get it out of the bottle. So ketchup is also a fun non-Newtonian substance. So let's get back to this one here. We have our cornstarch in here, and I put about roughly 400 milliliters of cornstarch, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to mix it into this bowl. Now, when you're making this at home, it is important, or it's not necessary, but it's going to make it a lot easier on you if when you are mixing this, you pour your water in first, okay? Because if you have your water in there first, then it's going to be a lot easier to mix that cornstarch in there because you're not going to have lumps. So it's a lot easier if you start with your water. So I have 400 here, so I'm going to want roughly 300 milliliters of our water. So I'm going to pour that in. Where are we at now? There we go. Okay. So I'm at 900. I'm going to pour till I'm about at 600. Okay. And a little bitty bit more. Okay. So we've got our water in here. Now remember, the stoichiometry on this is really up to you. You may see me add a little bit more cornstarch, add a little bit more water. When you're doing this one at home, very little goes a long way. So if you're like, it needs more, and then poof, oh no, you're going to have a mess. So when you're adding more water, you're adding more cornstarch, very little at a time. I'm going to go ahead and start mixing this. So I'm going to pour in a little cornstarch, and I'm going to be mixing it with our very scientifical tool here, which is a popsicle stick, okay? Now, popsicle sticks, if you've got a RayKitty science kit or you've got something at home where you use science, popsicle sticks are awesome. We're going to use them in so many different experiments. So you see that I'm kind of mixing it around as I go. And when I'm mixing it here, you'll see that it's starting to act a little bit different. Now, we're going to move it into some different containers, and we'll hold it up for you so you'll get to see it even more in just a little bit here. But I'm pouring this stuff in, and I'm stirring it. Now, right now, this is still acting like a liquid. I don't have enough of those molecules in there to really give us that non-Newtonian or that solid feel to it yet. When you're mixing this at home, you will mix it, and then all of a sudden you'll notice, oh, it's hard to mix, okay? So it can be hard enough that when you're mixing it with a metal spoon, you'll bend the spoon. So kind of take it easy when you're mixing it. Don't force it too much. Just take it slow, because then you have that liquid. Now, I've noticed it's getting a little bit thicker here. I may even want to end up adding more than my measurement here of the cornstarch, because like I said, it's really to your liking. And we have another experiment or demonstration we're going to be doing with this stuff in a minute here. So I'm going to add some more and see how we're looking. We're getting there, but I'm going to want it a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go straight from the can. There you go. And I am going to add some more cornstarch here. I'm going to move this guy over here. Now you can see I am getting a little bit on the table. When you rub it, it will just go away. That's awesome. So I'm putting some more cornstarch. We're going to make a nice big batch here because we are going to experiment with frequencies and waves in just a minute here. So I'm going to mix this up. It's getting to where it's pretty lumpy now, so I'm doing pretty good. And let's see, we'll go a little bit more. Now, the experiment we're going to be doing once we get this stuff ready, okay, is one that you can do at home with a speaker. If you've got a speaker that it's something that you can use like a subwoofer, and you can apply some energy to that, maybe put a saran wrap on it. But this one here, the little higher level one, I probably wouldn't do at home because you probably don't want Dad's brand new hi-fi audio system all covered in Oobleck. And so we've got a little device here that, oh, there we go. we've got a little device here that will simulate or give us that waves. Now my stick, remember how I said it's strong enough that your stick might get stuck? Well, my stick is getting stuck in there because it is really starting to act like a solid. So what I'm going to do now, because this stuff is safe, don't worry about it, I'll be fine. I'm going to stick my hands in here, okay? I did the majority of mixing with the stick just because it was a little bit easier, but I'm going to go ahead and pull out some of this Oobleck. Now you see that we've got this nasty, nasty mess here. What's going to be fun is when I can, I'm wondering if I should put just a little more in there. Let's see. Nope, I think we're good. So what we can see is I can actually roll this. Let me get a bunch. It's way more fun. Now, there we go. Now, I can get this Oobleck here. I've got a mess of it. I can roll it into a ball. And you can see that it will roll into a little ball there in my hands. Now watch what happens as soon as I stop applying that energy. It turns into a liquid again. So we act like a solid. You can even, if you're quick enough, you can break it. You can crack it, okay? Now I will get it on my hand. Now watch this. You say, oh man, Mr. Dave, your hands are terrible, awful, messy. They are, but this is going to come off very easy. I'll show you in just a minute. So I'm going to get some more here, see how much I can scoop up. I might want this to be just a little bit thicker, but you see it can pour like a fluid, okay, or like a liquid, and then I can, if I grab it quick enough, I can roll it up, and it can act like a solid. Now, another thing you can do is to punch it. Now, I'm not going to punch it very hard because, believe it or not, I would hurt my hand, so I don't want to punch it real hard, but you can actually slap that stuff, and it acts like a solid. I'm going to get just a little bit more in here. Okay, there you go. I want it just a little drier for this next one over here. So I'm going to mix this stuff in. Now, if you're doing this with kids, let them get in there, let them mix it up because it is really, like I said, going to be easy in a minute to clean it up. But now you can kind of see I added just a little bit more there. And you can see that I can actually break it. I can break it in half, but it's still a liquid. I can get that stuff and I can, let's see, I might be able to roll it into a little bit bigger ball here now. Let's see what we've got. Oh yeah, so now I can roll it into a nice big ball and that's getting ready. See how that's acting like a solid in my hands there? It's acting like a solid because we're squishing those molecules together with all of that energy, just like those magnets. We're pushing those molecules to where there's friction in those molecules until we release the friction. Until we release that energy, we release the pressure, and those molecules go ahead and act like a liquid again. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we are going to take this stuff that we made. I'm going to be cleaning it off my hands while I'm talking because I do want to show you it really is an easy cleanup. We're going to take it and we're going to go on to our little machine over here. And this machine is a wave generator. Okay, it's a sine wave generator. So what it does is it makes little waves. Okay, so just like you would kind of imagine from a, oh, it stuck to the plate there because I had my energy. So just like you would imagine, I am going to get a rag. Just like you would imagine a wave generator to do, what this thing is going to do is it's going to act kind of like a speaker, like I was talking about. Now waves, we're going to do some more talking about waves a little bit later, but this one here, when we're generating the waves, we're going to be applying energy and then not applying energy. Energy, not energy, okay? So you can see I've got this stuff splashed all over this powder on my hands. Remember how I said give it a couple minutes and it will wipe right off? So don't worry if I'm touching stuff with this because it is really pretty fun. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And I am going to get our little wave generator here. Now I'm going to leave this mess on here because like I said, it's really not a problem. As you can see, I'm kind of just scooching it out of the way so it's not setting in it. I'm going to get my wave generator. And this right here, if you can see, it says vibration generator. Okay, so what it does is this little rod in the middle goes up and down really, really fast. Okay, and we can change the speed based on what we want to do with our little, the generator over here. So it makes different waves based on the speed. Now, we're going to be messing a little bit with frequency. Okay? Frequency is how often something happens. Okay? Now this measures our frequency in seconds. So it uses a term called hertz. Okay? Now hertz is not just when your brother punches you. Okay? The hertz that we're using is how often something happens in a second. That's the frequency. I could say I frequently drink coffee. Okay? So the frequency is how often something happens. We're going to take our plate here and we're going to put it on top of our wave generator. Okay, so when this one goes in here, we're going to put some Oobleck on this plate, and this is when the fun happens. Now remember, our frequency is going to change based on this little machine right here. Okay, right now I have it at 30 or 0.30 kilohertz or 30 hertz. And so I'm going to, it's vibrating very gently. Now, we don't have a speaker cone on here, so you're not hearing the sound too much, but you may hear a little hum or a little buzz. Now, I'm going to get some of this stuff, and I'm going to put it on this tray. Okay? Now, remember, when you're scooping it, you have to scoop slowly. Okay? So when I'm scooping it, you can see it acting like a solid in there, and it's really hard unless you go very slowly. So I'm going to get some of that stuff, and I'm going to scoop it up, and I'm going to put it onto our wave generator here, okay? So what it looks like I'm actually making those pancakes that we were putting that syrup on earlier. After this, I am definitely going to have to get pancakes. But we've got this. Now you say, okay, well, that's fun. It's now sitting on the wave generator. Now watch what happens when we kind of change the amplification, which is how much those waves are moving, and we change the frequency. So we're going to turn this thing up, and we're going to change the frequency. Now, if you're watching this stuff here, what's happening is we're changing the amount of energy that we're adding and then releasing, and it's happening very quickly. So if you watch, if you look, you can see it kind of starting to take some shapes there. Now, as I change the frequency, as it's moving faster or slower, we're going to see it acting differently based on that frequency. So I'm going to speed it up here, and you're going to notice something start to happen with this little wave generator. It will begin to dance, okay? We get kind of like that venom ooey stuff that's going around there. So we're changing it here. You can see as that's happening on our tray here, this Oobleck is beginning to pull up and dance. Now, especially toward the edges, just because we have a little bit of extra there. So we're getting that dancing shape happening on that tray. I'm going to put some little bitty dots on there, and we'll see how that does. So I'll put a little bit around here, and we'll see if we can get that stuff dancing. And you can see on our tray here, that frequency, as we change it, our Oobleck starts to give us a fun little vibration and dancing and moving up and down. Now, especially toward the edges of this tray. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit here. The changes in the frequency, you can really see it now toward the edge here as it's starting to kind of crawl up, and it is dancing off of the edges of my tray. You get that vibration as the energy is happening. When it's giving it energy, it's pushing it up. So it's starting to pile up. And then when the energy is released, it returns back down to a liquid. So I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see that just a little bit better there. I'm going to turn this way. And then you can see that as it starts, that energy adds up. It presses, it acts like a solid, and then it moves down to a liquid. I'm going to take a little bit out of the center here. I'm going to break this up. See how it breaks like a solid there. And we're going to turn this down just a tad. There you go, and you can see on those edges how that stuff really starts to crawl up and look like venom on this little tray here. So as it's dancing up and dancing down, let me see if I can turn that towards you just a little bit there. There we go. Okay, as that is turning up and turning down and dancing around there, that's because when it has that energy, it's piling up. And then when the energy is released, it starts falling back down. So we can see it jumping up here. It's little lemmings going up and down and then jumping off of the edge of that little tray there. Our Oobleck, when we apply that energy, turns to a solid and then back to a liquid. Okay, so what we did here was we made our Oobleck. I'll leave this one running. We made our Oobleck. out of cornstarch and water. And then we made that oobleck. We played with it just a little bit. Some experiments you can do with that oobleck are to try cutting it. You can try pouring it. You can try rolling it into a ball. Like I say, I've got a lot of oobleck all over here. Don't worry, it'll clean up in just a matter of seconds. And we can see when you add that energy to it, we're getting that nice little dancing lemmings on the side of our tray. Okay, so let me tighten this up real quick and we'll try one more before we wrap up. So I will tighten this up just a tad. And there we go. So now we've got this little guy over here who is trying to escape off of our tray. So the oobleck, when you add that energy, you have a non-Newtonian fluid that works like a solid and also acts like a negative. I mean, like a liquid, okay? So that is it for this one. It's an easy one. Cleanup is super easy, so don't worry about that. You can clean this up in minutes if you give it a couple minutes. So once you're done experimenting with your kids and playing with this with your kids, then go ahead, just give it a couple minutes, wipe it right up with a rag, and you'll be good to go. So this one here is Oobleck, and this is our wave generator, and so we saw kind of what happens when you apply and release energy very quickly to that Oobleck, okay? That's it for me. I am Mr. Dave with RayKitty Creation Workshop, and you are joining us for the RayKitty Science Project. Thank you so much for watching.